South Africa, in its position in the world, we are a global player. In Africa, we are the leader in terms of economics and geopolitics. And therefore, we are considered a big brother. No, you cannot be a big brother if you are unable to wield a stick that will make people be afraid. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is he talking about and all that? How many of you will build a beautiful and expensive house and not fence it and protect it? I don't think none of you will do that. Constitutionally, the South African National Defence Force is mandated to protect and defend the country. Now, any home will display its character, its worthiness, by the level of security that it places around it. Now, if we're going to play big brother in Africa, and therefore what we give for the Defence Force should symbolize that. A lot has been said about the South African National Defence Force not being well equipped, not being resourced and all that. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm saying, and I'm appealing to the politicians that are here, that next time you sit down and debate, think whether you are protected or not. Because that grant that you're giving to the people out there, the education of your children and everything else will not materialize if you're not protected. I'm sure many of you know that we are sharing our grants for the poor with people who are not supposed to share the grants. And that is because we are not protected. Our borders are porous. And they're porous because you, the politicians, have decided you want a Mickey Mouse Defence Force. I'm sorry to say that. And by the way, the Adjutant General is here. I'm protected. I'm not making a political speech, by the way.
Well, joining me for a conversation on this is the chairperson of the Defence and Military Veterans Parliamentary Committee, Takeover Likhwete. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Do you agree with the sentiments being expressed there by the Surgeon General that our Commander-in-Chief, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is essentially presiding over a Mickey Mouse Defence Force that has been created by politicians?
Thank you very much, Alton, and good morning to all the viewers at home. I think I have to start by saying that it's just unfortunate that the General could not sense the occasion which he was addressing. It was a funeral where we are mourning the fallen heroes of our National Defence Force and the pride of our nation, who passed on in the DRC in defense of peace in the region, in the country, international. Now, it's just unfortunate, of course, a general is a person of privilege who sits in the Military Command Council, which is responsible for the security of the country on a daily basis and paid by the taxpayers. Now, it's just unfortunate that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, apparently South Africa's got a Mickey Mouse Defence Force. And no, that's not me being cheeky, as always. That's just straightforward, straight from the Surgeon General of the SANDF, Lieutenant General Nchaveni Peter Mapaha. He said it at a funeral and not in a hushed tones either. He basically told the politicians, "You've turned our military into a joke." And guess what? He's right. Now, I quote, he said, "You, the politicians, have decided you want a Mickey Mouse Defence Force." Close quote. Now, you'd think the politicians would take that on the chin and maybe even reflect on the fact that our borders are as porous as a sponge and our Air Force can barely keep the presidential jets in the sky. But nope, enter Takeover Likhwete, the chair of Parliament's Defence Committee, basically told Mapaha to shut up and stick to the script. You see, in the ANC land, telling the truth is reckless. If you're wearing a uniform, they prefer their generals well-fed, well-paid, and quiet. And here's where it gets interesting. Because while our top military doctor is spilling the tea over a hollowed out army, another senior minister, Kumbutsa Chaveni, is out there telling Parliament that there's a risk of a coup d'etat in South Africa. Yes, a whole coup. No details, no evidence, just a casual, we've detected coup risks, as if she's announcing the weather. Now, let me connect the dots for you. You know, we have a defense force openly called Mickey Mouse by its own leadership, a security minister hinting about coups without proof, a police ministry in chaos with the minister suspended over alleged links to criminal syndicates, and, the provincial commissioner coming in with army-styled uniform, and a president so desperate he appointed Gwermantashe as acting police minister before Feroz Kachalia came in a few days ago. Tell me that doesn't sound like a security cluster eating itself alive. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand the security cluster is made up of many departments, such as policing, such as the defense, and SIU, and all that stuff. Now, it can't be that this is not the first general, by the way, in the SANDF to come out against the government. And, well, it's a cool thing they're coming out and, saying what we, the people, are saying, but we must consider there's a slight undertone of a possible coup. You had General Mkwanazi in the policing sector of our government, or not sector, but rather department, coming or drabbed, wearing, military style uniform. And we saw fights there in the SAPS between, well, it seems like there are different factions in the SAPS. Now, all these have just got the remnants and the possibility of being what we should all actually be afraid of, which is a military coup. Now, the Walter Sisulu and Albertina Foundation called Nchaveni's coup comments dangerous and politically reckless. Translation, they think she's fear-mongering to distract from the fact that Cyril's house is on fire. And they might be right, because if you can convince the public that there's a coup plot, suddenly you don't have to answer questions about corruption, crime, or why your army's biggest strength is sending, sternly worded press releases. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's my theory. This coup talk, it's either a small bomb to shift attention from police scandals and all the other rubbish going on in our country, or B, an early warning that the security cluster is so divided that factions inside the state might actually try something stupid, or C, a little bit of both. Because let's be honest, if there was a coup brewing, would we even be able to stop it? Our Air Force can't fly without borrowing parts from the museum. Our Navy has 3 submarines but can only get 1 out of the harbor. Our Army is using Caspers older than most of the privates driving them. Our, defense force cannot use their own email server. They've got to use Gmail accounts and Yahoo.mail because, well, their own servers aren't working. And this isn't exactly toppling government-proof infrastructure, if we have to be quite honest. The bottom line is the SANDF's own leadership is warning that our defense force is underfunded and unfit. Politicians are more concerned about where those warnings are said than what's actually being said. And in the middle of all of that, the minister in the presidency is whispering coup, like the plot of a Netflix thriller. If there's instability brewing, it's not because of shadowy rebels in the hills. It's because the security cluster is imploding from within. So next time you hear potential coup risks, remember the only thing more dangerous than a weak army is a paranoid government trying to cover its tracks. Because when your generals call you out, your ministers, well, they cry coup, and your police are on special leave. Well, let's just say Mickey Mouse might actually be running the show. It's the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Come inside, it's fun inside. I'm joking. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, is Ntshavheni's coup warning a real threat or just political smoke and mirrors? And would our Mickey Mouse SANDF even be able to stop it? Many questions need to be asked. Many, many questions. It's funny how you can pick up on a supposed coup, but you can't pick up on Lesotho, insurgents planning an insurrection and a takeover of South Africa. Can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. You really can't make this stuff up, And then General Mkhwanazi, says something, and instead of investigating in the first place before this commission that has been set up by, our president in his infinite wisdom, the first thing that comes to their minds are, this is a coup. That is South Africa for you, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, I'm not saying there are no undertones of coups or thoughts of a coup amongst the security cluster. Definitely by no means am I saying that. But I'm saying, let us not use our skeletons, or let us not use the military and the term coup d'etat as a scapegoat for our own skeletons. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been 10 Minutes with Kuhle. If you love the work you do, consider signing up for membership. It really helps. As well as you can like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, keep safe, stay blessed, and watch out for this possible
on the deployment as well as the work that is expected of our soldiers. Or even considering, for instance, the budget that wasn't delivered, still the money that is allocated comes in far below than what is expected of the percentage compared to other countries spending about 2% of their GDP on the military force, and we don't come close to that. We're at about 0.7%.
Look, I fully agree with the point that we need to improve on the funding of our defense, because state governments or state exist on three reasons. The state exists to feed its people, the state exists to grow its people, the state exists to defend its people. That is one of the key anchors of the state governments and statecraft. And I agree, that's why all countries in the world, and most countries, they spend anything between 2 and 4% of their GDP towards defending their sovereignty and territorial integrity, because even now, our territorial integrity and sovereignty is under challenge from gangsters, from extortionists, from zama-zamas, and the point that is raised by the general, but in a wrong platform of a funeral. We need to improve the funding. And so far, this meeting of the minds between us as the portfolio committee, as well as the executive, the president so far has made a commitment that they will increase their funding to the defense force from 0.7% to 1.5% of the GDP. We are having a closed session meeting with National Treasury next week, Friday, on the 28th, to finalize that process of how, over the medium-term expenditure framework, we will phase in the implementation of increasing our funding to 1.5% of the GDP, so that we are not blamed for porous borders, we're not blamed for high levels of crime, we're not blamed for our people who die, over 29,000 every year, in the hands of criminals. That honeymoon for criminals must also come to an end, because they play into the gallery of what the general said, turning the institution of the country into a Mickey Mouse or even the National Defense Force. We need to improve. The time now has come that South Africa must take its rightful space in ensuring that its citizens are properly protected, its people are properly benefiting from the taxes and they pay to pay salaries of soldiers and the police and intelligence and yet they are not safe. It's just fight and fail. It can't continue like this. We are clear as the portfolio group that the honeymoon is over now. We need to defend our nation.
Finally, as a member of parliament, as a politician, a member of the African National Congress, do you take accountability and responsibility for the underfunding of the military of this country, as well as for the poorest borders? Because these are budgets that go through parliament and these are budgets that are voted on, and politicians in the majority have voted for these budgets to go ahead.
Yes, we need to take responsibility because this underfunding happened in Parliament over the last 15 years. The last time we had a credible funding of the Defence Forces about 15 years ago, where we funded it with 1.4% to the GDP. And now what we need to know, even all literatures in terms of military science, be it Sun Tzu or Machiavelli, they are very clear that in times of peace, you need to prepare for war, and in times of war, you need to prepare for peace. And we are at a point now where our country is peaceful, but we cannot say we are immune from any terrorist attack. We cannot say we are immune from any attack. And it must be clear that the military command council, these generals, and some of them must do their work. We cannot allow them to complain we can't wait until we have a terrorist attack or we have an attack in our country. We need to wake up and smell the coffee, because in times of peace, we must prepare for war, and in times of war, prepare for peace.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Takeover Lekwete. He's the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence as well as Military Veterans.